Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Bold Take Scouting Podcast. It's been an enormous day in the NFL world with tons of massive signings around the league, and we're here to break it all down for you.
All right, so before we hop into any of the free agency news, I think everybody knows by now, but, Breeze retired. He announced it this morning or yesterday, and I just want to get your thoughts on that. Because Breeze is, a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Oh, yeah. I mean, just tremendous respect to him and the career he's had. I think it was probably the right time for him and the Saints to move on. And I think it's been nothing but a really successful couple decades for him in New Orleans.
Yeah, totally. I agree. I think, like you said, it was time for him to move on. His arm is really, fallen apart a little bit over the past 2 years, I'd say. And I think he took a while to announce his retirement after the end of the season, and people were saying, "Oh, is he going to come back or not?" I think he needed to announce that before free agency, so the Saints could figure out what they're going to do at quarterback next season and beyond.
Yeah, and let's get into some free agency frenzy. So, I mean, I'm not going to hide this. I'm a Patriots fan, and I mean, it's been way more active than it ever is in New England on the first day of free agency. And I'm going to be honest, I am not a fan of these moves. I got to say, first of all, this didn't happen today, but bringing back Cam Newton, if he's really the starting quarterback in 2020, I can't get on board with that. I know some people like Cam, but to me, I just saw a wildly inaccurate quarterback in 2020. And now the fact that he's going to be back another year with a lot more money after having really not earned that is just beyond me. And then let's just look at some of the weapons he got today. Jonnu Smith on a 4-year, $50 million deal. I think for a tight end, that's pretty inconsistent. That's quite the overpay. Nelson Agholor on a 2-year, $26 million deal. So that's $13 million a year for the next 2 years. So basically wide receiver one money for Nelson Agholor, and he will be the wide receiver one on the Patriots. I can't understand that. I can't. And Kendrick Bourne, 3-year, $22.5 million. That's $7 million a year over that. I don't understand how adding Agholor, Bourne, and Jonnu Smith is going to elevate this offense whatsoever, especially with Cam Newton at quarterback. I don't understand that. And I think that this is just throwing money at players that are really not at all worth that. And there may be cap space right now, but cap space is not eternal. I'm just really afraid that the Patriots are getting themselves into some contracts that they're not going to want to keep around. And I really don't think the offense is going to be much better than it was last year. And if you look at the other contracts that they signed, Matt Judon to a 4-year, $56 million deal. So many people are fans of that. But for me, he's a 29-year-old edge rusher. He's never had 10 sacks in a season. And we know some of those Ravens players, once they leave that talented defense and system, they don't perform to the same level. So for me, I'm just scared that he's not going to perform to that level. He's definitely going to be the best Patriots edge rusher, and he's going to give the Patriots an edge rushing spark because it's been bare in the last couple of years. But I don't see how he's worth that money, especially at his age. And then Jalen Mills, 4-year, $24 million. I just don't see the value in that, even if it's not much. Davon Godchaux, I thought that was a solid signing. Henry Anderson, we don't have the details yet on the money, so it's hard to assess that. But overall, I just think that Bill just completely strayed from his philosophy. And I'm not sure if it's for the better because there's a lot of these. I don't like any of these contracts individually. And when you sum it all up to that much money spent on players that I don't think are going to elevate the team at all to the level that the money they've been given suggests, man, I can't get on board with this, and I'm really frustrated as a Patriots fan because for once we had the money, we went out and we spent it, and I don't think we spent it wisely.
Well, obviously all the money spent is clearly something that you're not happy with. I just wanted to point out the Cam Newton contract. When it was signed, everyone reported that it was a $14 million contract. And a lot of times what happens at signing is people report the numbers to be a little inflated than they are. It's in total $14 million. It's extremely incentive based. It's a $5 million base contract, I think. It might be even less than that. I think it's $3 million and then $5 million with the roster bonuses, and it can go up to $14 million. And he'll only get paid $14 million if they win the Super Bowl. So
But for Cam Newton, my issue is not the financials. It's just the plan of having him as a starting quarterback.
Well, I mean, I can see where you're coming from, but what else were they going to do at quarterback? Were they going to roll with Stidham? They clearly don't believe in Stidham.
Well, definitely not roll with Stidham, but I'd even rather explore options like Marcus Mariota or Jacoby Brissett. I think that those they can be game manager types to a better, safer level than Cam Newton until you find that next franchise guy.
I mean, I agree. I don't think Cam Newton's a starting caliber quarterback in the NFL anymore, or at least a quality starter. But I mean, I think from Bill's perspective, it's, do I really want to start over with another quarterback in the first year of the system, or try to see where we can go with Cam this year and, maybe cross our fingers, hope that it improves from next year. But, if it doesn't, then, next year, hopefully we'll be in a position to go draft a quarterback up at the top of the draft. Because this year they're really not, not in the range to draft a top quarterback.
Well, I think that the aggressiveness we saw from Bill Belichick. I just pulled up Abe's comment here that he thinks the Patriots will definitely draft a QB this draft. I wouldn't be surprised because we usually see the Patriots trade down in the first round almost every year. But I mean, look what Bill Belichick did in free agency. He never does anything near this caliber. I would not be shocked if he didn't go make a move up for Trey Lance or Mac Jones. And I think that Trey Lance will be a terrific fit because you can run the same offense that you're running with Cam Newton, and while you let him develop. And I think Lance is a much better quarterback long term than Cam Newton, obviously.
Oh, completely. I think I said 2 months ago, I thought the best option for the Patriots would be re-sign Cam Newton and go make a move to draft Trey Lance, because I thought, Lance, like we've said multiple times, is not ready to play right now, but they'd run a very similar offense between the two of them. So Lance has the ability to develop right into that offense that he would be running next season. And you have Cam for one season, and Bill's not going to succumb to any peer pressure or whatever, and the pressure from the outside saying, oh, you have to bench Cam, put in Trey Lance. Bill's going to say, no, he's not ready yet. Cam is our starter right now, and we'll move on, and no one's gonna impact his opinion. Before we move on, I wanted to bring up a signing that just happened. Titans signing Bud Dupree. Not really sure what the money is yet. It hasn't come in yet. My assumption is that it's probably going to be a 1-year deal, just because he's coming off that unfortunate ACL tear.
I think it's a good signing.
I completely agree. I think he's got a really high upside with the signing. I think obviously there's a really, really low floor because of his ACL tear. But the Titans are badly in need of a pass rusher, and I think we can hop onto the Titans right now and talk about how this signing may impact their draft a little bit come April.
Yeah, I don't think it should impact their draft. I've seen so many people mocking an edge rusher to them, and I wouldn't hold back from doing that because of the Bud Dupree signing. If anything, I think that it would be a great plan to sign Bud Dupree and then go draft a Jalen Phillips or an Azeez Ojulari at 22nd overall. I think that would be a terrific way to address that need, and that actually really might be what allows this Titans team to take the next step in terms of trying to get to a Super Bowl, because that pass rush was really the biggest weakness of that team. And with Bud Dupree and a talented rookie coming off the edge, their pass rush will be a lot better.
Oh, I completely agree. I think, if I was the Titans heading into free agency, I would have made a play for, any of the top edge rushers and planned on signing a top edge rusher and drafting one definitely in the first, maybe the second round, if you can move up to get one of those guys at the top of the second. It's an interesting class of pass rushers. There's definitely not one top guy that we've seen the past few years, Chase Young, Nick Bosa, Joey Bosa. There is not one of those guys. But there's definitely a lot of guys that have really high upside. And I think if you have the right coach to be able to develop them and, harness their traits and their skills, they could definitely turn out to be a Pro Bowl caliber guy. A guy like Gregory Rousseau, Jalen Phillips, Azeez Ojulari, all those guys will probably go in the first round. And those are guys that I think the Titans could target. If they were interested in more of the second round guys, they would probably have to move up for a guy like Jason Owa, who he might even find his way in the end of the first round. But he could be there at the beginning of the second if they wanted to move up. But I agree with you. I think it's a great signing, but they definitely still need to address a pass rusher within the first 2 rounds of the draft.
Yeah, and so moving on, another signing that broke almost right before we went live is Corey Davis to the Jets on a 3-year, $37 million deal, and they also signed Jared Davis on a 1-year, $7 million deal today. So I know you're a Jets fan, so what's your take on this pair of signings, and especially the Davis signing?
So I'm just going to talk to Jets fans a little bit. I think everyone was hoping to sign one of the top 2 interior offensive linemen, either Corey Linsley or Joe Thuney. And I think people are saying that, Joe Douglas didn't do enough to get him to sign there. Sure, it would have been great to have him sign there, and I'm sure Joe Douglas probably did whatever, as much as he could do to sign Thuney. I know it was reported that he didn't have a lot of interest in Lindsey. But, I mean, Joe Thuney got a massive contract from the Chiefs. And, you can't blame anyone for turning that down. It was 5-year, $80 million, I think.
5-year, $80 million from maybe the best team in the league. So
from the best team in the league, or one of the best teams in the league with the best quarterback in the league. How can you turn that down? Even if the Jets were offering him $3 million more per year, I would much rather go to the Chiefs.
No competing, yeah.
Exactly. So, there was no competition for the Jets there. I think Corey Lindsey, that's disappointing. I think I would have liked to see the Jets sign Lindsey. To be a center, because center is a very important position on the offensive line, especially when we're expecting them to draft Zach Wilson, a veteran center, is really helpful to young quarterbacks. And I think all Jets fans will know that Nick Mangold, the longtime center, was extremely helpful to Mark Sanchez when he was there as a rookie, and when we were in our glory days of making the AFC Championship game.
All right, I'll reel you back in a little bit, but what do you think about the Corey Davis signing?
All right, so the Corey Davis signing, disappointed. I think they way overpaid, and he's flashed, but has not been consistent at all. And he flashed in his contract year. The first 3 years of his career, he was a bust. And I did not like it. I really wanted to see Kenny Golladay. I thought it would be great to have a top-tier wide receiver to help, either if for some reason they decide to keep Darnold or go with a consensus and take Zach Wilson. I thought it would have been extremely beneficial. And just to say one more thing on the Jets, I really wanted Shaq Barrett, but he resigned with the Bucs, and I think we can talk about the Bucs in a second. But I think, like we said, pass rushers pretty deep with it by the end of the first, early second round, and the Jets have 2 picks there. So I would expect them to at least think hard about taking one of those pass rushers with either their second first round pick or pick 34 in the second round.
Yeah, I think I'm not sure how to feel about the Davis signing, because you do want to believe in those flashes and in the traits he possesses, but at the same time he hasn't been consistent. Although when you look at the other wide receiver signing of the day, where Nelson Aguilar got this actually more money per year, it doesn't look as bad. But just to touch on a few other offensive line moves, because you already talked about Joe Thuney and Corey Linsley. The Chargers signed Corey Linsley to a 5-year, $62.5 million deal. I think that's maybe the best deal today to lock up maybe the best center in football on a 5-year deal with an average value of $12 million a year. I think that's great. And then obviously the Chiefs went and made a splash with Joe Thuney. I'm not sure where they found the cap space, but and I really think for any team targeting the interior offensive line, Linsley would have been a better value than Thuney. And I'm not sure Thuney is really worth quite that amount of money. But I mean, he's certainly going to be giving high level protection to Patrick Mahomes, and you've got to invest top dollar money in that. And then if you look at the Ravens, Kevin Zeitler on a 3-year, $22.5 million deal. He's at the tail end of his career, but I think that's a solid signing because he can just give some solid play for a couple of years. And I actually really like what the Bills have done. The Bills with Darrell Williams on a 3-year, $28 million deal, John Feliciano on a 3-year, $17 million deal, and then outside the offensive line, Matt Milano on a 4-year, $41 million deal. Those are 3 important pieces for their team that they got on team-friendly deals, and the ones that are older in age, they gave them 3-year contracts instead of sticking them on 5-year deals. And really, the money per year is I think really in favor of the of the Bills. And when you look at some of the overpaid contracts today, the Bills are the opposite, and they've managed to retain their significant pieces in house on good deals. And I mean, hats off to Brandon Beane. I think he's a terrific general manager. So I really do like the deals they've made, and all these offensive line signings really make me wonder what the Bengals are doing. I think the Bengals should be grabbing a couple of these guys, because I think Joe Burrow really needs much more protection in order to be able to hit his potential.
Oh, completely. And I think, everyone, agrees that the Bengals need offensive line help. I think that's why it's pretty consensus that, Penei Sewell's being mocked to the Bengals at 5, and there is absolutely no reason to think the Bengals will do anything other than Penei Sewell unless he goes to, the Dolphins at 3. But I still think that's slightly unlikely. I think they go wide receiver unless we find out that they do sign Kenny Golladay, who, he's been rumored to be the top 2 teams. From what I've seen right now, it's been between the Giants and the Dolphins. But I think Penei Sewell or Rashawn Slater 5 for the Bengals. They have to go offensive line.
Man, I actually, if the Dolphins could sign Kenny Golladay, I think that would be incredible, because because that would allow them to really pick Penei Sewell 3rd overall, and not to force a wide receiver, because as good as Jamar Chase and Devontae Smith are, I don't think they're the same level as why am I blanking? As Penei Sewell in terms of a draft prospect overall. So I think that would be a great combo to sign Kenny Golladay and then draft Penei Sewell. And just to go back a little bit to the Chiefs, I know Abe here said, I think the Chiefs need tackle help more than anything. Shaq Barrett came off that edge and got to Mahomes at will. They cut both starting tackles, Eric Fisher and Mitchell Schwartz. Both have had some injury issues, and neither was available in the Super Bowl. And we saw how that happened. And Joe Thuney is an interior offensive lineman, so I really wonder what the Chiefs' plan is at offensive tackle on both sides.
So, well, I think we had this discussion, I think, a few podcasts ago about potential free agents, and there was not really much depth at the tackle position. I don't think we've seen any big name tackles get signed today, and I think that's probably going to happen a few days from now. I don't think any of them are going to get the top tier free agent money. So I think it's honestly smart for them to stay away from any of the offensive tackles. And in regards to them cutting both their starting offensive tackles from their Super Bowl win from the 2019 season, Mitchell Schwartz, he had a second back surgery, and there's rumors floating all around that, unfortunately he may never play again just because, his back is clearly not healthy. And then Eric Fisher tore his Achilles the AFC Championship game. So I highly doubt that he's going to be ready for the start of the season. To me, it kind of made sense that they cut both guys. I think if and when they're healthy, I think they would probably be interested in bringing them back. I just think right now with the drop of the salary cap, it made no sense to have them on their roster.
Yeah, they definitely need to find solutions, though. And what I would like to do is, they're sitting there at 31 in the draft. I think they should trade up 10, 12 spots and grab whichever of the group of Rashawn Slater, Elijah Vera-Tucker, or Christian Darrisaw is there, because I think those 3 are really surefire, good offensive tackles, even left tackles in the NFL. And I'd rather go get them. I think they're more pro ready and they're safer picks than if you sit there at 31 and take a guy in the group of Alex Leatherwood, Tevin Jenkins, Samuel Cosme, one of those guys, Jalen Mayfield. I just think that they should go and get one of the offensive tackles from that next tier, because they need a high-level starter in 2021. So that's what I would be looking for in terms of a draft plan to address the offensive tackle position for the Chiefs.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it would definitely be smarter to move up 10, 12 spots. I don't think you're going to have to give up too much draft capital to move up, 10 spots. And I think you would be getting a much, much better player. If you move up to 20, I think somebody like Christian Darrisaw will probably be available at, 18, 19, 20.
Yes.
He's probably, I think, the most likely out of the top 4 guys we mentioned. I think Vera-Tucker's pretty well highly regarded in NFL scouting circles, probably more than the general consensus. I think Darisaw, who I think is a really, really good tackle, I think he could be available, like I said, 18, 19, 20, and that would be so smart for the Chiefs to move up. But let's also remember last year they did draft Lucas Niang. He opted out because of COVID, but he's not on the level of Darisaw at all. But I do think that was a solid draft pick for them, and I think it was the third or the fourth round.
Third. Yeah.
Third. And so I think he could be a quality starter for them, probably a right tackle. So, I mean, I think if you pair Niang and you move up and get a guy like Darisaw, I think you could really improve your offensive line tremendously from the last game of their season last year to probably week 1 this year.
I'm not sure about making Niang a starting tackle, especially this early. I think there would be a lot of growing pains that you can't afford as a contender right now. But looking at the draft order, if you look at 20 and 21, the Bears and the Colts, they're going to be in the market to get that offensive tackle. I do agree that one of those guys is going to fall. They should be calling the Raiders at 17, the Dolphins at 18, the Washington football team at 19, and be working those phones, as we've said, to try to go get one of the offensive tackles in that group. And just moving on, we alluded to the Bucs' free agent moves, and they've really managed to retain everyone. And so props to them for that. They already signed Levante David and franchise tagged Chris Godwin. And then today they signed Shaq Barrett to a 4-year, $68 million contract, and Gronk re-signed to a 1-year, $10 million deal. And I love all those moves. And I'm astonished that they brought everyone back, but good for them.
Yeah, I don't know how they brought everyone back. I thought once they tagged Godwin, I thought, there's Shaq Barrett has to go out the door. Especially after they re-signed Levante David too. Mm-hmm. I thought, that's it. Godwin is probably going to get under the franchise tag. I don't know what it is exactly, maybe 18 million, 17 million. And, they didn't have a ton of cap space. So I thought Shaq Barrett's going out the door. He's going to be a free agent. And I thought that was okay because they're sitting at 32 in the draft. And they are in prime position to snag one of those high upside pass rushers. So I just figured they were going to be okay with that and okay with letting Barrett walk. But clearly they wanted to keep him. And I don't blame them. I think he's a very, very good pass rusher. And good for them. And
I think Shaq Barrett was the one out of all of those guys that you had to keep. If I had to choose one to keep, it would have been Shaq Barrett. So I thought he was going to be the one left out. Turns out they got him as well as everyone else. So I think that they're primed to really make a serious attempt at repeating, and I think that would be incredible. So just to move on to another edge rusher who signed a big contract today, Leonard Floyd got re-signed by the Rams for 4 years, $64 million. I think it's a little bit too much, but I do feel like they had to keep him, and good edge rushers are expensive, so I'm not too surprised.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me either. I think, he was drafted by the Bears in the first round, and he never really panned out for the Bears, even when he was, alongside Khalil Mack. But whatever happened with that trade to the Rams, I don't know, if it was the defensive coordinator who's now
playing
gone
next to Aaron Donald helps.
Oh, totally. But it was clear that something just clicked automatically. So, I don't know if it was maybe the defensive coordinator that just helped him whatever, scheme they're running in compared to the Bears. But like you said, Aaron Donald is going to help a lot. And I think, they had to overpay, but I mean, it seems like the Rams are just willing to just toss out money to guys that are really good at their position, and they're not too worried about signing guys for depth. I think the Rams do a really good job of drafting for depth, and they're one of the most willing teams in the NFL to consistently hand out top money to free agents, or make massive trades like the Matthew Stafford deal, Jalen Ramsey. And it's worked out for them. The Rams are a successful franchise over the past 4 years.
You got to win a ring though. You got to win a ring to make it worth it.
Oh, totally. And I said this before. They're my Super Bowl pick when we made them back over a month ago. And I'm going to stand by that. I think they have a great team. And I see just 30 seconds ago, the Jets signed Carl Lawson, the edge rusher from Cincinnati.
Wow. That's a big loss
So
for
that
the
is
Bengals.
that's
The
a
Bengals
huge
are not
loss
having
for
a
the
good free
Bengals.
agent day.
They're not. They're losing players that they should have kept, and they haven't been able to bring in anyone to improve the team. We talked about the Jets and how they're in need of a pass rusher, so I think this is a great signing for them. I still wouldn't be surprised if they go edge rusher maybe in the second round, because they have no edge rush whatsoever. But I think Carl Lawson is a huge addition for them coming off the edge.
I'm just so surprised because it's I sensed around the league that people thought Carl Lawson was going to be back in Cincinnati, and this is not good. You've got your franchise quarterback in Cincinnati, but you've got to be retaining those talented players that you have. I hope they manage to re-sign William Jackson, and then you got to be adding some pieces, and they're just not managing to do that yet. And so moving on to another team, the Browns signed John Johnson on a 3-year, $33 million contract. I thought that was a fantastic signing. He's a really young player at 25, hitting his second contract, so you're not worried about whether or not he's going to fall off by the end of that. And he's just a really smart, instinctive safety that I mean, this is probably top 3 in terms of best signings with best value today for me. And I just asking you, we're looking at the Browns. They don't have too many holes, but they clearly need just a little bump in talent to really get to the point where they can make a deep playoff push and even think about a Super Bowl. So if you were them at the bottom of the first round, I think they have pick 26, I want to say, what position would you target?
I think all along I've mocked them a linebacker. I think, like you said, they're a really well-built team. I think they're loaded at the running back position. Although I don't think Baker Mayfield is one of the top 5 talented QBs in the league, he fits Cleveland. His personality fits Cleveland, and I think he's a great leader for that team. He's exactly what they needed a few years ago to kickstart that franchise. So he's your franchise quarterback. I don't think many people will argue with me about that. I don't think he's worth Dak money, Mahomes money, Watson money, but they have a quarterback in Baker. Their offensive line is really solid. Their wide receivers, clearly they have Odell, Jarvis Landry. So and then on the defensive side, defensive line is fine. Their cornerbacks they're just a really, really
and they
well.
added the safety they need. But I'm sorry.
Exactly. I think probably their 2 biggest positional needs were safety and linebacker. They probably signed the best safety on the free agent market. And like you said, he's young, only 25. So if I were the Browns, like I've said before, there's a lot of linebackers that I like in this first round, and even with some second round grades. So if I was the Browns, I would take a guy like Zaven Collins at the end of the first round. He's a linebacker.
That'd be fantastic.
260 pounds, great size speed combination. I think he would really upgrade that defense on the linebacker position.
Yeah, I think honestly though, because this is a really important window for the Browns. You really want to make a serious push while you still have Baker Mayfield under his rookie contract, because you said he doesn't deserve Mahomes, Watson, Dak money, but he's going to get a lot of money. Yeah, this is with these surefire franchise quarterbacks, this is how it works. Next man up gets paid. So I think you really got to try to complete this team and go for a serious run in these next 2 years. So each draft pick is really important. I think Zaven Collins will be a terrific addition, and I would honestly, why not add another wide receiver? Odell's future in Cleveland, I'm pretty uncertain about that. Jarvis Landry is a slot receiver, but how about just getting another outside receiver that you can use to lift Baker Mayfield up until the next step of his career and his play level. I think if at 26th overall, if Rashad Bateman was there, I'd be thinking about him. And after that, I think it would be a great plan if they went somebody like Zaven Collins in day 1, and then on day 2 and day 3, they really got some explosive playmakers. I'm talking maybe Dwayne Eskridge, maybe Cade Johnson. I want to just some of those guys, because there's no lack of explosiveness, speed, elusiveness, all that in this wide receiver draft class. And you can be finding guys in the 3rd, 4th round who are going to be able to stretch the field and give you looks to go deep and create some big plays. So I think that it's really important for them to try to add 1 or 2 of those pieces in the draft on top of a really solid first round draft pick, so that they can really make that push to contend while Baker Mayfield is not taking up too much cap space.
Yeah, I love the idea of adding a wide receiver for the Browns in the draft. And, you said Rashad Bateman at 26, that would be extremely tempting. I know we both really like him as a wide receiver, but just for me, between needing a needing a linebacker, that's probably their biggest position to need. And if a guy like Zaven Collins is there, he's a guy that I really, really like too. So if I was the Browns GM sitting there at 26 and I had Zaven Collins and Rashad Bateman on the board, knowing the depth of the wide receiver class and the lack of depth at linebacker, I think there's a top 4 or 5 guys. And then to me, it really starts to fall off a little bit. I would much rather take Zaven Collins at 26. And like you said, day 2, grab some wide receivers, and even day 3. We've said this before. I know everybody else talks about it. This wide receiver class is so deep, and you could get starters on day 3.
Yeah, and so moving on to another team, the Raiders signed Yannick Ngakoue to a 2-year, $26 million contract. I think I kind of like this because he's a guy with a lot of talent, and he's been looking for that big contract, and clearly he's not getting it. I think because it's because he really does need to take a prove-it deal, which this sort of is, because even if it's $13 million a year, it's only over 2 years, so you're not really getting yourself into too much trouble if it doesn't pan out. I think he needs to take this, and if he plays extremely well, then he can get that big contract. I think, it's definitely a high upside signing that if it doesn't work out, it doesn't cost them too much. So I like the deal.
Yeah, I like the deal, and I think edge rusher was a big position need. They swung and missed a couple of years ago with Clelin Ferrell at number 4 overall. And, later in that draft, they drafted a guy in Max Crosby, who he's a really solid edge player for them. And I think, Yannick Ngakoue and Carl Lawson – not Carl Lawson – Max Crosby, on either side, I think that really eliminates the potential to take an edge rusher on day 1 or day 2, because they have some bigger positions of need. I would say linebacker is a huge need for them. I think a guy like Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah would be a great pick for them. And I think he's a guy that, with his speed, he can occasionally come in on an edge blitz to just provide a little change of pace on the edge rush. But I think Yannick Ngakoue is a great signing for the Raiders.
That defense needs Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. I think that would be a home run pick. Because if you look at his skill set, I mean, he's got so much speed to play sideline to sideline. He's got a lot of athleticism and fluidity, so he can drop in coverage. He has potential as a blitzer and as a pass rusher. He can really be that explosive chess piece that defense needs to unlock a higher level of play, because I think there are just too many players that lack that dynamic ability to just make plays across the whole field and to drop back and cover from the linebacker position. So I would love the pick. And just to look at another team who, honestly, this is more of what they haven't done. The Jaguars have had a few signings. Roy Robertson Harris on a 3-year, $24 million deal. Jamal Agnew on a 3-year, $21 million deal. I don't understand how a return specialist gets that deal. And then Carlos Hyde on a 2-year, $6 million deal. I think he's just not even a notable addition to that running back room. I don't think he would deserve touches over James Robinson. He'd just be an insurance policy. I think that it's a shame for them because they have a lot of cap space. They have the promise of Trevor Lawrence coming in. They have a big name coach in Urban Meyer. I'm honestly a little surprised that they're not attracting more big free agent signings. Is it the market in Jacksonville that's never been that attractive, or I'm just not really sure. And I think they need to be making a bigger push.
Yeah, I think it's got to be the market. And, I think, between having Urban Meyer and the number 1 overall pick, which, everyone strongly believes is going to be Trevor Lawrence, I think those would be 2 huge things to attract free agents to Jacksonville. And like you said, their biggest signings are Roy Robertson Harris. I haven't really heard his name too much. I mean, he was a defensive lineman for the Bears, and he was overshadowed by guys like Khalil Mack, Eddie Goldson, and I feel like they overpaid for him just because it's not a name recognition guy. And $8 million per year with a lower cap. I don't know. And then, like you said, Jamal Agnew, a return specialist, $7 million a year. And we talked about this before we went on air. That's $7 million a year per punt return touchdown. He's good for one punt return for a touchdown a year. So if you're willing to pay $7 million for one touchdown off a punt return, then that's a signing for you. And then Carlos Hyde, he's a Ohio State guy. Makes sense to see him reuniting with Urban Meyer, and I think he's more of a depth, maybe change of pace guy with James Robinson. I know there's been something's going around U Stadium about maybe signing Curtis Samuel, and I think everyone's made that connection because of Urban Meyer. There's nothing been official yet, but we'll see.
I think they've got to sign Curtis Samuel. I don't think he's going to be too expensive, and it's by far the best fit. If Urban Meyer can use him like he used him at Ohio State, where he's just more of a gadget player, that could really unlock his explosive skill set to a level that we haven't seen in the NFL thus far in his career, because people are trying to use him as just a normal wide receiver. And I thought he was a bad pick in the second round by the Panthers because it didn't look like he was going to project as an actual complete wide receiver, and he was going to forever stay in more of that gadget role. But if you look at Curtis Samuel and Laviska Shenault, those are two guys that are so good with the ball in their hands. And I think that Urban Meyer has always ran a system at Ohio State where he's able to use these wide receiver skill sets to their advantage. If they're not that complete wide receivers, he can use them as some of these explosive playmakers in more of a gadget play style. He did that with Paris Campbell too. And I think that if he could really take the NFL by storm if he somehow managed to translate that play style he had at Ohio State to the NFL, where he has this high reliance on these gadget players and he's able to utilize their explosiveness to the offense's advantage. So I really think they should draft Curtis Samuel. And just going back to how they're not attracting too much free agent signings, I think it's also because we're so plugged in to the scouting community and all that. We do all our scouting work, so we know that Trevor Lawrence is going to be a really good player. I think NFL guys, obviously, they all know who Trevor Lawrence is, but he's not there yet. It's a new coach too. He's not been in the NFL scene too much, Urban Meyer. So for them, while we see the promise of Urban Meyer and Trevor Lawrence, they don't see anything established yet, and so that lacks attraction in terms of coming in as a free agent.
Yeah, I completely agree. And while you were speaking, I was just reading. It looks like Jameis Winston reached a one-year deal with the Saints.
As expected.
It's worth up to $12 million. Yeah, like you said, expected. And I think that's a good signing for the Saints. I think Jameis Winston is a guy that has a lot of potential. I think you saw it with the Bucs when he threw for 5,000 yards, but then you saw the negatives with 30 interceptions. And I think part of that came with, the Bruce Arians, no risk it, no biscuit offense. But I think the Saints is a great place for him, especially with Breeze retired. It'll be interesting to see what they do at quarterback, because I think it's going to be a QB competition, and the best man will win between Taysom Hill and Jameis Winston.
I think it's got to be Jameis Winston. I'm sorry, but I don't understand why Hill started when Breeze went down this season, because for me, you got to take a shot at Jameis Winston being your next quarterback. There's really not that many options on the market, and they're in no man's land in the draft at 28th overall. And so I like this 1-year deal where it's really a prove it deal. He's got a good team around him, and they're going to put him in there. Hopefully they've dialed back some of that aggressiveness and poor decision making that resulted in the 30 interceptions when he was in his last season as a starter in Tampa Bay. And so I think that it's definitely the right deal, pretty expected too. We'll see if he can confirm it. If he doesn't play to a good level, then they just move on. So it's definitely the right move.
Yeah, I think if the Saints could make Teddy Bridgewater look as good as they did when he started 5 games for them, and he turned that into a big contract with the Panthers, I'd love to see what they can do with Jameis Winston, because Jameis Winston definitely has some potential. He's got a really good arm. I just think the decision making is not there. But I think if anyone's going to simplify the game for him and say, hey, Jameis, look here, if he's not open, throw it here, it's going to be Sean Payton. And Sean Payton, we saw, in the Bucs playoff game, you saw that the touchdown pass, they had Jameis throw that. They didn't have Breeze throw that. They didn't have Taysom Hill throw that. He put Jameis out there, and they made that play specifically for Jameis Winston. So I think that shows you the kind of belief that Sean Payton has in Winston's arm. and his abilities.
Yeah, and I just want to talk about one last team before we end the broadcast, and that's the Packers, because quite frankly, I just do not agree with the decision to re-sign Aaron Jones to a 4-year, $48 million contract and let Corey Linsley walk. I mean, it's been proven that signing running backs to a second contract doesn't work out. I would do it for a very small number of guys. Derrick Henry, yes. Christian McCaffrey, yes. Alvin Kamara, probably. Not Aaron Jones. He's not quite that level. He's had some injury issues in his past. They drafted A.J. Dillon in the second round last year. I'm not a fan of A.J. Dillon, but if they could have stuck with him and drafted another guy this year, because I mean it's not that hard to find a running back even outside of round one in the NFL draft, and to get use of him while he's on his rookie deal, and to avoid ever putting too much cap space into a running back. And for me, it's just when this move means that Corey Linsley, an all-pro center, left in free agency, and they lost that piece at the center of their offensive line. I don't understand. The Packers front office keeps making some head-scratching moves, and I think that they're really hampering their ability to win another ring with Aaron Rodgers, which is a real shame for them.
Yeah, I think their poor moves start with last year in the draft, trading up, taking Jordan Love. It's completely different than when Aaron Rodgers fell to them at 26, when they still had Brett Favre. Aaron Rodgers was in the conversation for number 1 overall, and he fell all the way to 26. I don't know how that happened.
24, yeah.
Oh, yeah, sorry. But, he fell so far, and that was a no-brainer for the Packers. It should have been a no-brainer for so many teams. And obviously, you can say that now looking back, but, it was a completely different situation when they drafted Jordan Love. I thought they were trading up to take a wide receiver. And, Jordan Love didn't do anything. Obviously, he's a quarterback. Aaron Rodgers won MVP. But then A.J. Dillon in the second round, when you have Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams, they're not doing anything to help Aaron Rodgers win. And I agree. Signing Aaron Jones to his 4-year, $48 million contract, they paid him too much money. That's too much for a running back. And I would have much rather seen them re-sign Corey Linsley. And I don't think Aaron Jones would have gotten $12 million a year on the open market. I think
he might have.
From who? Maybe the Dolphins?
Yeah, maybe the Dolphins.
Then let him walk.
Regardless, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Let him walk and re-sign Corey Linsley, and then roll with A.J. Dillon and a running back you draft maybe on day 2. I love Javonte Williams so much. Actually, I think that Michael Carter in the 3rd round, or Kenneth Gainwell, would be great, because if you were to pair the power of A.J. Dillon with the explosiveness of Michael Carter, that's a very cheap running back tandem, and you get to keep your all-pro center.
Yeah, I think that would have made a lot more sense to me. I do think Aaron Jones is a top 10 running back.
Yeah, for
in
sure.
the league. And if they could have gotten him for the right price, I would have re-signed him to a 2-year, maybe 3-year deal, maybe for, I don't know, $8 million a year. I would have paid that, not 12. I would have said Corey Linsley is the priority. We need to make sure we pay him. And I'm a little confused that Aaron Rodgers didn't try to push for them to re-sign Corey Linsley. A center is so important to a quarterback, and no quarterback likes making a switch at center, especially when you're getting up there in age. So I'm just surprised that it seems like they let him walk so easily.
And that's also what I wonder about the Patriots, is why David Andrews is unsigned when they've made several boneheaded decisions today, and their high-level center, David Andrews, is still on the open market.
Yeah, but speaking of the Packers losing Corey Linsley, I mentioned 3 months ago that center might have to be an option, something to look at in the 1st and 2nd round for the Packers, and now that's a real possibility. I think that a guy like Landon Dickerson, maybe at the end of the 2nd round. I know he had injuries, and I don't know if he'll be ready for week 1, but I think he could be a decent pick at the end of the 2nd round, especially for a team that now needs a center.
I'd rather go Josh Myers, though. I just think that the injury history and some of the athletic limitations with Landon Dickerson have him behind Josh Myers on my board at center.
Me too. I'm just centers can, it's weird with centers where centers go in the draft.
I think Myers will be there. Maybe not, but I would expect him to be.
I mean, it may be, maybe not. I know it's not a great like high-end center draft. I know the Jets, we talked about them losing out on Lindsey. I know they've been reported to be interested in Creed Humphreys.
Have they? I haven't heard that.
Yeah, Tony Pauline. I think that would be interesting to see them take Creed Humphreys, not with 34th overall, but if they trade out of that or get the second round pick that they could get from trading Sam Darnold. If they trade Sam Darnold, I could see them taking Creed Humphreys, especially since they lost out on Corey Linsley.
Yep, that makes sense. And I think that wraps up our show today, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think we hit on all the teams that made big moves in free agency or the lack of big moves. The Bengals. I think maybe actually one more team that I wanted to bring up really quickly. The Bears, that they franchised that Allen Robinson, but he said that he's not going to sign the tender. He does not. He doesn't want to be in Chicago playing for the Bears, and I mean, I don't know. Are they going to try to trade him? I don't think. I think he's going to hold out to the very last second.
It's going to be a really tricky situation.
It's
going to be a really tricky situation.
Oh, totally. If I were the Bears, I would try to trade him and plan to get one of those wide receivers at 20. I think a guy. Let's see who could. I mean,
Rashad Bateman.
Waddle will probably be gone, but
Waddle
I think
will be long gone. It's for me at 20. It's Rashad Bateman.
Yeah,
I think they still got to do everything they can to reconcile whatever qualms there are there with Allen Robinson, because he's such an important piece of that team. And given that they really don't have a quality option at quarterback right now, they can't lose a top wide receiver.
I agree, but I just don't think he wants to be there. I think he just wants to move on, and kind of like the Deshaun Watson situation. He's just doesn't want to play there.
He deserves a good quarterback. Finally, if you look at the quarterbacks he had, it's like Blake Bortles and Mitch Trubisky, Nick Foles. It's just he's never played with an actual even franchise quarterback. It's crazy, and that just speaks to how good he is, that he's produced at that level and played at such a high level despite never having a good quarterback. And I'd love to see him elsewhere, actually, where he has a good quarterback, because that would be great for him.
Yeah, he's a top 10 wide receiver in my eyes with the quarterbacks that he's played. And, you mentioned all of them. So imagine what he could do with a top quarterback. But I think that pretty much wraps it up. I don't think there's any more signings at the moment that we want to talk about in regards to their impact on the draft. If you guys have any questions for us about, free agent signings in the future and how we think that impacts the draft, feel free to ask us on Instagram, or you can even tweet at us on Twitter. You can see right behind me, Instagram Bold Take Scouting, and then our Twitter is at Bold Take Scout. And yeah, that wraps it up for this free agency podcast. We'll be back next week. Thanks for listening.